Hello and welcome everybody. Thanks so much for joining me for a small business guide to money matters. I'm Cec Busby, the editor of Kochie's Business Builders, and today we're broadcasting to you live from International Towers in Barangaroo. Now, but before we jump into the masterclass, let's take a moment to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of the land in which we gather today, and pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. Now, in today's masterclass, we're taking a deep dive into the world of money. I know that managing the financial side of your business and your life can be quite a puzzle. So that's why we've invited Amanda Thompson along today to share insights, strategies, and practical tips that will help you navigate your finances more effectively. Amanda is the founder of Endurance Financial and is a financial advisor with decades of experience. She's helped thousands of people learn to manage their money better and is a sought-after keynote speaker and business coach. She's also the best-selling author of Financially Fit Women, which is chock full of practical advice. So Amanda, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you and good morning.
Good morning to you. Now, Amanda, I imagine we're going to be talking about money mindset quite a little bit in this discussion. So can I ask, how did your money journey begin? Like, were you the kid that was, the saver with the piggy bank, or were you constantly out splashing your cash and spending your allowance?
I definitely didn't have an allowance or cash to splash, so I grew up with a single mum who did it tough and worked really hard to provide for her family. But what I did learn about myself as a kid was that goal setting mentality, which I've kept as an adult. So if I really wanted something, I would save what I could and I would buy it. And I worked from a really early age.
Yeah. So what exactly is money mindset? When we're talking about money mindset, what is that?
Do you know the best way to describe it is to let's go to the jungle and say, yeah, let's go to the jungle. Okay? Yeah, absolutely. The lion, we know, is the king of the jungle. Yeah. But does he really suit being the king of the jungle, other than that we now know he is the king of the jungle? Is he the biggest? Elephants, hippopotamuses, they're all bigger than the lion. He's not but the smartest, and he's definitely not the fastest, because that's the cheetah. But yet he has two major things: confidence and courage to take a step into the unknown. And now we all look at the lion as the king of the jungle. The same can be around money mindset, is that if we put our mind to something, we can achieve it. We've just got to know the steps. So it's not just about positive money affirmations. You see a lot of those going around Instagram, TikTok, you can manifest money. Well, no.
Oh, I want $1 million now.
And I don't think we'd be here if you could. I think you probably grew up too with the money we didn't grow on trees concept. So mindset is about owning who you are and where you've come from with money, and then dealing with what that looks like going into the now and the future.
Yeah. So how much of, say, your parents' values in terms of money, how much does that determine your money mindset?
I think it's really key to say it's not just parents. So there could be other people in your life that you take guidance from. And so for me in particular, my grandfather was my biggest, person who made an impact on my life. So I watched my mum struggle, and I watched my grandfather while he was alive give a lot. And so people need to understand more so where they grew up and those people that are in their lives. So they could have had a teacher or an auntie or an uncle or even an older brother or sister that they've learnt from or got those money mindset or the money beliefs from.
So what about limiting beliefs then? What if we're always going, oh, I've got no money, I can't do that, I've got no money. How much of an impact does that have on our ability to, generate wealth?
I actually really believe it has a huge impact, and I say a lot about setting goals, and I'm anti New Year's resolutions, because normally we say I'm going to give up something or I'm going to do something differently, and it's based on a negative concept, and we all know that positive energy breeds positive energy, and the same is for negativity. Normally negativity comes out of fear. So it's not so much I'm hopeless with numbers, I'm scared to see if I can get better at numbers, just in case I don't.
Yeah. Is that also like the fear of a budget?
Yeah. Well,
Should you not call it budget?
I don't call it a budget for that. It comes negative, isn't it? A budget says you're going to restrict your spending.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's negative. So my business partner, Georgia, and I call them spending plans. So let's look at your spending plan and let's discover a surplus as opposed to limiting what you spend.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So everyone is feeling pretty challenged financially at the moment. There's cost of living going up and up and up, inflation, mortgage rates on the rise. Like it's just this spiral of enormous money pressure for so many people. So how can you cultivate a mindset that is going to help you navigate such a challenging time as well? Because it would be easy to go, oh, the sky's falling.
Yeah, and we do feel like the sky's falling. The cost of living pressures are real. We would all know someone, regardless of what their pay is, that's living from paycheck to paycheck at the moment. And so for me, the way to deal with this is always to come back to self and to set personal goals. So when we know what we're striving towards that doesn't necessarily have a monetary figure as its foremost idea, we're more likely to make decisions based on achieving that. So if it's going on a holiday with our family, or, you know, for me, it's actually buying a new bike because I do triathlons. Whatever that is, if you are driven by that on a personal sense and what that gives you, so you go back to self, it makes me happy, or it makes my family happy, or I work so hard I don't spend time with my family. If you can bring those goals back to self, you are more likely to make decisions that will achieve them, and make intentional spending habits as well. So you might sacrifice some things to gain something else.
Yeah, how does that go in terms of, you know, can that lead to you developing a sort of scarcity mindset though? You know, like people that went through the depression and then for years afterwards would always be hoarding their food or stuffing their money under the bed.
Yeah, look, I think it can, and I think the majority of us in this time would have some form of scarcity mindset. Me being a financial advisor, I have it. So I'm not admiss to that, because it's like personal trainers. Financial planning is kind of a luxury item that a lot of people see. So business slows down in times of hard when really it should be the opposite way. And so that scarcity mindset needs to be reviewed. So when we're talking about numbers, it really flows well, doesn't it? Because everything that we do, business related or money related, should be reviewed. So yes, if you're scared, but when things turn, you should be reviewing things to turn that around again. But as long as you set your goals and you are trying to achieve something, it's not really a scarcity mindset, because you're moving forward towards something.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So since we've brought up the small business side of things, what do you think are the key financial metrics that business owners should be really focusing on right now?
It's never going to be any different than cash flow. Cash flow is so important, because we'll see so many shows out there, or you'll see so many people, we were talking about this before, on Instagram and the like, saying, you know, profit, 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 and we hear profit first. But what does profit first mean? Profit first means that you've actually got your cash flow sorted, and you know that with all your planning, there's going to be money at the end of the day to have a profit. And so, especially in times like this, cash flow allows for changes. You know, if we want to say interest rates are going to go up, or put that into the cash flow, you can actually know whether you can achieve that or not. And then, so that's one. A second thing is habit forming, you know, in things like paying your superannuation on time, or putting money into the bank on a regular basis so that you can meet your obligations for staff or yourself, paying yourself regularly. And it's one of the biggest issues with small business and self-employed people, is they pay themselves last, and then they find themselves continually robbing Peter to pay Paul. And so you get confused of what the business is making, because I'll just take what I want and the accountant will fix it up at the end, and we have no idea what our business actually looks like.
Yeah, we should really have separate accounts, shouldn't we? There should be the business account and then the personal account. And as you say, don't be robbing Peter to pay Paul. I've got a question that's come through, which is also something I was kind of wanting to ask you about. It's from Trish. She's saying, how often and what time of year should prices or fees be adjusted? Is there a rule? of thumb to approach with this. How much of an increase? Services businesses are a little difficult because we don't have a cost of goods that we need to cover.
It comes down to your break even of your business. So you should be reviewing, I say, especially in hard times, you should be doing it quarterly. When you lodge your BAS, you should be reviewing your accounts. So get into, again, those habits. Paying yourself as a service provider or increasing your rates is about knowing what your costs are. So if you have staff, we all know that the cost of staff have gone up because superannuation has gone up. So you should be reviewing it on those key moments as well. I say especially to the small business component, when you register for GST for the first time, it's a really exciting thing, but how many people put their prices up at that point? So either they're going to put their prices up by 10% to absorb that GST, or they're going to absorb it themselves, therefore they've lowered their prices. So that's a really key time. If you work with, and this is the benefit of working with someone on a regular basis who looks at your accounts. So if you're really good with numbers, look at them every 6 months. If your cost of living's going up and you're feeling the pinch, go back to your accounts. So again, come back to self. You'll know when the right time is, and don't be scared to do it.
Yeah, so you suggest regularly checking in on your numbers. It's not something that you do when it's time to hand in your tax return. That's not when you should be looking at your numbers.
And you know, on that, how many people hand in their tax return and actually look at their numbers? Or do they just go, they might have a quick look at what their zero looks like, but do they really absorb it? And then they wait for the accountant to do the numbers, and then they get retrospective numbers. Because that's what tax returns are. They're retrospective numbers of the previous period. Now, from a small business perspective, again, we don't put our tax, or we don't have to put tax returns until May. So you're already, nearly at the end of the following year to make any changes. So that's why you've got to review regularly if you really want to keep up with what your business is doing.
And you're missing out on that real-time data, which all businesses have access to now if they're using stuff like Xero or QuickBooks or MYOB software. Like, that real-time data gives them the real position of what's going on in their business. So if you've got that access, why not look at it and see what's happening for your cash flow and how you can improve things?
A real little hack for businesses thinking, when do I put my prices up, or when do I review, is chances are you'll get an email from a supplier. No matter whether you're a product business or a service-based industry, you'll get a email from your supplier saying prices are going up. So use that as your motivation to, or maybe it's the third email you've got. Okay, now I've really got to do something.
Yeah, that's great advice. If someone else is putting their prices up, why not you? And also, it seems to me there's a bit of a fear around being the most expensive, whereas it's not bad to be the most expensive, is it?
There's an old adage, it seems too good to be true, or it's too cheap. It probably is one of them. But also, your pricing is the value you put on yourself and your services, and you want to align to clients that value your service and yourself as much as you do. So putting your prices up doesn't devalue who you are. It just means that you're going to potentially find the right clients for yourself as well.
So what is a good way to set a pricing strategy? That's probably number one thing people want to know.
As a small business owner, I always start my workshops in a really simple way. Is how much did you earn if you were once upon a time when you're employed by someone, or what is the going rate for whatever it is that you do in business now? And you make that an annual figure, and then you work out what your working capacity is. So if you're a working mum and you're only working 3 days a week, whatever it is, you actually work out how many hours a week you're going to work, and you factor that into that annual rate, and there's your hourly rate.
That's pretty simple.
It's simple. It's scary when you go down that path, because at the start you think, it might be $50 an hour, but you haven't added in all your costs yet either. So when you get that base rate, you'll be okay, I've got a staff member that costs me this and they're not income producing, so I've got to add that onto my hourly rate. But that's a really good base to give yourself a little audit in what you're receiving.
So let's go back to that cash flow thing, which I think, cash flow is king. They always say that. And you might be turning over a lot of money, but that doesn't necessarily mean that your business is profitable. So what are some ways to manage your cash flow, particularly during times like this where it's very lean pickings for a lot of businesses?
It is. I strongly believe in having that separate account. If you're finding times tough, if you are not meeting your quarterly obligations or your tax obligations, then you should be putting a percentage every week away into another account. That's your GST account, your superannuation account, or those expenses that we want to meet so that we aren't playing catch up. That's a really good start to cash flow, is to actually put aside the money that you're going to end up having to need. Too often on balance sheets you'll see loans to directors purely because they've taken so much money out of the business, or they've had to pay things from their own money. It's just not organised enough. So that's the first thing. The second thing is to be aware of what's going out and to understand your revenue streams. And that's we talk about negative things. Money going out in these times is really hard because we know it's a struggle when we are lean. So have a look at the other side, which is the revenue side. Are there ways to add a different offering? Are there ways to increase a certain part or extend what you're doing? Do you have a membership that you could put up $1, $2, which then is going to equate to more money coming in? I think looking at your revenue streams is so much more fun too than looking at your expenses.
Yeah, well, it's always more fun thinking of new ways to make money
instead
of new ways to pull money out of your pocket.
But conversely too, when you're looking at your revenue streams, if there is something that you're spending time and energy on, then maybe it's not the right time to be doing that. So the other key to any business is to ensure that in whatever reporting system you use, you have more than just a single sales line. Break those sales down into different revenue streams so that when you, who knows your business better than anyone, is looking at those, and you'll be like, I only made that from this, and here I am putting all my energy in it. So you might see an opportunity to put more energy into the bigger or the better producing one.
So should all businesses have a financial plan then?
I say yes, but it can be incorporated into a business plan. So a financial plan doesn't necessarily equate to a financial planner or a financial advisor. I'm not sitting here today saying that, but if you're not good at your numbers, find a team around you that are. Ask your accountant to spend a little bit of extra time with you developing some projections, or look for, there's so many templates and things like that around to do those business plans. They don't need to be complex. So as business owners, we think we're time strapped. And so I don't have time for that. No, you're just choosing not to make it a priority. So you should be putting it quarterly, whether it's a team meeting with yourself in the mirror, having a conversation about money and your financial plan.
Yeah. We had Kochie Simmer here a month ago talking about building a business that people want to buy. So I'd like to ask you as well, when we start our business, should we be thinking of the exit?
Absolutely. So, and to talk about my book really briefly, there's actually a small business retirement plan section in there. Again, everything I talk about will come back to self. What do you want to achieve long term? Are you working in your business for that to be your retirement plan? So you're not going to put money in super, or you're not going to diversify your investments and that's your one-stop shop? Or do you want it to provide for your family in the future? In the now? That will depend on what you want that balance sheet and that profit and loss to look like, because we all know we can make that profit and loss be essentially whatever we want. If we want a loss so we don't have to pay taxes, that's great. But if you want to sell your business and you're trying to sell a business that's showing a loss and doesn't have the right add backs, then that's not attractive to buyers or lenders either. So you really need to have and understand what your end personal goal is and then work backwards from there.
I'm glad that you've brought up retirement, because I think so many small business owners really don't have a retirement plan. They really don't set up their business thinking about, I'm going to sell it at the end. What kind of considerations should small business owners be thinking about when they're setting up for retirement?
So I have that, I use lots of analogies and sometimes I like them and sometimes I don't, but that keeping up with the Joneses is one that I don't like, except when it comes to superannuation. So I say, if you're your own person in business and you were employed by someone else, what kind of super would you be getting? So try and at least keep up with some superannuation contributions. And the reason I say that is because if we leave superannuation or retirement planning to the end, there are restrictions on how much we can put into superannuation now. And so you could find that you are limited in what you can put in or the tax effectiveness of it. But also in Australia, it will be the number one vehicle for retirement when we can access it. So I'm talking over the age of 60 in Australia. It's tax effective. I can't see any government coming in, and you can call me on it if it changes, but I can't see any government coming in changing that attractiveness of superannuation, because we are not going to get access to the age pension when we're older.
So what if I'm going, I can't afford to pay myself super, I'm struggling to pay my staff their wages and their super contributions?
And again, this is where the business planning comes in. So you're paying staff and you're paying those staff's superannuation. What makes you any less important than those staff that you are actually helping them build their retirement? And so unfortunately, some of those things come when you're looking at hard times. Do you have to go to a 4-day week, for example, with your staff so that you can look after yourself as well? It's the whole put your own oxygen mask on first before you help other people.
Yeah, I guess you can't really look after your own stuff if you're not looking after yourself, definitely.
And they see, so whether we're children, staff, anything, we lead by example. As business owners, we are the head of a business, and we lead by example. So what are we playing to our staff, or how are we showing the value of ourselves to our staff if we're not looking after our own best interests financially?
What about if I'm currently I'm working in a job and I'm thinking, oh, I've got this good idea, maybe I want to become an entrepreneur. What's your plan if I was considering that move?
It's a bit of it's like divorce. It's not always greener. Life is not always greener on the other side. So go in with an open mind and maybe dip your toe in the water. If it's something that you can do as a side hustle to start with, do your research. Don't jump into something and leave a good paying job just because you're going on a whim. Yeah, I'm all for believing in yourself, but I'm all for protecting yourself as well. So when I go back to setting personal goals, your personal goal might be, I want to start my own business. And a part of that will be, what do I need to do? And surely it'll have, I need a bit of a emergency fund to get me through a period of time while I start my business. So therefore, you should be motivated and driven to save some money for that particular purpose, then jump.
So let's go back to that personal goal thing again. So your personal spending plan, not budget.
Good girl.
What are some effective strategies then for establishing a personal spending plan?
It all becomes around intentional spending. Yeah, it's a really good word to think about. Or if you're a negative type person, you would call it, what about sacrificial spending? What am I spending on now that's sacrificing in the future? I like intentional spending. Yeah. I'm walking here today, I broke the heel on my shoe. I probably need to buy that shoe so that I don't walk in with one shoe on, one shoe off.
Yeah.
But I'm walking through the airport today and these shiny bright shoes are singing at me. Is it an intentional spend to go, oh, another pair of black shoes wouldn't hurt? It's the same concept. So what do you want to achieve and how are you going to get there? So it's those SMART goals, isn't it? They have to be measurable and achievable, and they have to be specific. You're more likely to get there and you're more likely to make conscious spending decisions.
Yeah, so SMART goals, that's a way to be more intentional.
Yeah, always.
Is that an acronym?
Yeah, you go. Is it specific? Someone listening might be able to quickly answer for me. Specific, measurable, accountable, maybe? Yeah, I can't remember. Review, look, yeah. But it's those, yeah. So
but they're clever.
Someone tell me.
What about investing in our business then? Because sometimes the best thing we can do with our money when we're making a profit is to put it back into the business. Would you recommend that?
If it's for capital, if it's for a capital purpose. So if you are putting money back into the business to continually fund the same thing. So if you're putting your own money in the business to fund staff, I would suggest,
No.
I would suggest that your business isn't moving like it should, and you should review that. If you put money into the business to market a little bit, something a little bit different in the hope that your return on investment will come back, sure. But again, it comes down to setting your wins and losses, isn't it? Your stops. So how much am I going to put in to the business, and how much do I want the business to fund itself? So if you're in a growth phase and you want to scale, why don't you have enough money in there for the business to pay for itself to increase? If you do, however, again, it's really important that you record that money going into the business accordingly. I find so many small business owners, take money from parents and things like that, and it goes in as drawings, whatever it is, or owner's equity. But if you do loans, if you do a loan, it means you can bring it back out tax-free as well. So it's more money back to you eventually.
Right, that's clever.
So you've got to make sure that all the money going in and out of the business is accounted for properly from an accounting metrics, because it's ultimately your money at the end of the day when it comes back to you. And if we can not have to pay tax, and or it doesn't necessarily have to come back as a salary, that's not a bad thing either.
Yeah. Also, Danielle has piped up and she said specific, measurable, achievable, relevant and time bound.
Oh, that's it. So you've got to send a time limit. Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you, Danielle. We would have been racking our brains the whole way through. It just would have been niggling away while we were talking. Now, money in relationships. That's a big one, I think, for not just our own relationship to money, but if we're in a partnership, a business partnership, what does our business partner think about money? If we're in a romantic partnership, what does our partner think about money? Do we need to get these things on the table from the very beginning?
Oh, well, Scott Pape says date night, isn't it, all around money? So if you read The Barefoot Investor, he says yes. And I have to agree. Again, I know I sound like a bit of a broken record, but let's come back to this personal goals concept. If you share with your partner, whether it's a business partner, whether it's your children, whether it's your romantic partner, if you share personal goals above and beyond monetary goals, you're more likely to get buy-in from that person of what you want to work towards. Where if you said, oh, I just want to go buy that big house down the street because I want $1 million, I don't know whether you could get a
you might not get out for
anywhere.
$1 million anymore.
But the concept is there. So you do have to have these conversations, but you also you need to have conversations around spending and how you're going to run business accounts or how you're going to run personal accounts. When we look at the biggest stresses in life, I'm going to get this one right this time. It's not an acronym this time. So health, relationships, economic, external global factors, money, and self-worth. So there's 6 main stresses to someone. We'll often go to counselling to talk about our relationships. We'll go and seek the doctor's advice for health. We can't do anything about the global crisis unless we're politicians. And economic ones, well, again, same thing. So money's the one that's left on the table that people actually don't go and put that personal development and that self-development for. If you work on that with your partner, you are more likely to be less stressed when it comes to that.
So how can we communicate in a way then that our financial goals will align with each other's? Because particularly if we're coming from very different mindsets.
Attend your accountant's appointments together, attend your financial planning meetings together so you're both comfortable, if we're talking romantic relationships. So you're both comfortable with what's being said and open and transparent. From a business perspective, you've got to have shareholder agreements anyway. Even if it's your best friend, you need shareholder agreements so that you can have exit strategies, because we hear so often that people become malaligned in even business. So you need exit strategies from a business perspective. It's just about open communication. And
Sorry, I was just going to say, are there any other strategies then that if I'm in a business partnership I should be putting into place?
I always think you need a third person. So even if you...
a tiebreaker?
Yeah, yep. And I'm sure, I haven't looked into it, but I'm sure there's people out there that would hold that role. So you could have a mini board meeting, for example, and you're taking notes and you're making plans and things like that, but you actually got that, you know, like mediator, and you don't want to call it that, tiebreaker is good, but a mediator that makes sure everyone's being heard and that as a group you're going forward in the same direction. So it could be a business coach, it could be your, you know, financial planner that steps in for an hour a month, or you may actually have a staff, probably not a staff member, but you might have a colleague from somewhere else in the same type industry or something that you're trusted. Yeah.
What about personal finance? Because with, as you were saying, so many business owners, they're not separating their business and their personal finance. Maybe they've got personal debt. What can they do to protect their business in that case? And, you know, what are some better strategies?
In terms of?
Making sure that the business isn't impacted by their personal debt, or their personal finances aren't impacted by business debt.
Structure of the business is really important. So going in, you know, with your eyes open. Sole traders, partnerships, trusts, and proprietary limited companies. Proprietary limited companies, people have this concept that it's only because of tax that we start a company. You know, it's because it's that, you know, I'm earning too much and we might as well save tax. But there's so many more protections. So you've got limited liability, like, you know, you can be shareholders, you can have the different shareholder entities. So the flexibility around a company is much larger than a partnership, especially when we're talking about debts and things like that from a liability perspective. Shareholder agreements are an absolute must because, again, it protects that. When you go for more so lending, from a bank, as a business, try not to do directors' guarantees. So then you're not putting your house up necessarily, or if you are, that you're both doing it. And from a business perspective, the same thing. So if you're trying to get a loan outside of the business, be mindful of not putting the business up as a guarantor as well. So there's some very specific, that gets a little bit more legal, a little bit beyond. I have people I'll go to when I need those things answered for my clients. But there's normally documentation you can do, but again, it's about communication and keeping yourself open.
What about if the horse is already bolted and I'm in a huge amount of debt? What are some strategies that I can put into place to help me start paying that debt off?
Shop around to make sure you've got the best interest rate on your debt is the first thing. And the second thing is, again, it comes to habit and making sure that you're repaying it regularly. You've got a plan to repay it. You do not repay it with further debt. It's a common one. We'll pay debt with debt. You know, we'll go and pay that credit card off and extend our home loan to pay it off, and then we use the credit card again, and we fall into this cycle.
Yeah, so be really careful if you're consolidating your debt that you don't get yourself into more debt.
Yeah, and you need to work with someone. If you're in that much debt that you're really struggling, and a lot of people are, Australia has great financial counselling hotlines. We've got the debt crisis hotline, but you also have...
And they're free.
They are free, which is great. You can also ask, and again, it comes down to communication. If you're really struggling, ask the loan provider for a period of rest, or don't default. So don't give yourself a bad credit rating if you've got things that are on the go. And then that's where you really need to go back to your spending plan, isn't it? And figure out, what do I need to stop in order to get myself back on top again.
How likely are your lenders to give you that grace period?
Not very.
But no harm asking.
But it doesn't. Some banks will say you could have a 3-month pause. If you're sick, so under certain circumstances. So if you're sick, if you're going through family issues, you know, as a relationship breaks, some banks will give you that just pause, and it might only be 3 months, it might even be 2, but maybe that's just enough to get you started.
Yeah. All right, I've got a debt pause. I've worked out my plan. I'm going to pay things off. Is there kind of a strategy in terms of, say I have 3 credit cards, should I be looking at which one has the least amount and try to pay that off first and pay the others at their minimum? Or are there any kind of little hacks that you might give?
Oh, do you know, I'd be the one that would pay the small credit card off first, only because to actually have that,
it's a win.
It is. It's a win, and then I'm more motivated to get the other ones down. However, if you've got a lump sum to pay that small one off, great. If you haven't, you always pay the one that's costing you the most in interest, because for every dollar you put in, you're not paying it down by $1. So you try and really attack the largest interest rate first. But in saying that, that's more say as I do, say as do as I say, not as I do, because I'd be the one that would be going, I don't have a credit card.
Wow. What do you do when you go to a hotel?
I have enough money to always have the debit
you have to
card
do a cash
there.
bond, or
I'm a giver. Giver, and so I learned. Plus, I got a STD, sexually transmitted debt, when I left my husband.
I was like, where are we going with this?
I know, money and STDs. Hey, see, I knew the acronym for that. So I don't have a credit card because I know my spending habits would be, if I saw something that was so good for you, I'd buy it because you're my friend, you know. So I know what my limits are. I've worked a lot on my money mindset. I do have a credit card for my business, so when I go away, and that's only recently because my business has been in, and I've been doing enough travel to warrant that I really probably need that from a protection mechanism. But other than that, I do not have a personal credit card and haven't had for 10 years.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people watching could actually say that.
Yeah.
Probably people have more than one card.
Don't. And why do you need more than one? And look, the bank legislations have changed a lot too in how they can just give you increases. They're not allowed to just give you increases anymore. So a lot of people have probably got that legacy debt of, you've been such a good customer,
Yes.
we're going to give you more debt.
Have 5,000 more.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
I'll go spend it, but how do I repay it?
Yeah. Do you think that there's this increasing debt crisis as well because of the availability now of things like buy now, pay later?
Do you know that's going to come crashing down sooner rather than later, hopefully. My girls, I have 2 children, they're not allowed to use Afterpay. What's the other one? Zip. There's a few.
Yeah, there's quite a few.
One that starts with K. I can't remember
Klarna,
now.
Yeah.
If you don't have the money, why are you buying it? Yeah. Remember, it's a reverse lay-by. I grew up with lay-bys, which I had to go and make sure that I was putting my money to it on a regular basis. It meant that I really had to want that because I wasn't going to get it for 6 weeks or however long it is. This is instant gratification. Buy now, pay later is instant gratification, and it's no better than a credit card. Someone's winning. You know, someone's winning. They charge. It's not good for the providers because they get charged to use it. So the small businesses are losing money by using Afterpay, even though you'll hear everyone say, oh no, but you get your money. You'll get more customers. It's just not fair. I really disagree with it. It's probably one of the worst debts you could have because if you do not repay it on time, the consequences would be disastrous.
Yeah, there's big interest rates, like far more than a
You
regular
poked the bear,
credit
didn't
card.
you?
Yeah.
Did you?
I see that.
Anyone with teenagers, they learn from us. So if they see us putting things on buy now, pay later, they will think it's the norm. It's like having to teach our kids that money doesn't come out of the orange ING card, the tap and go.
Yeah.
It's no different.
Do you think that children these days have a different understanding of money simply because they're not handling money?
I don't think they have an understanding of money, full stop. And it's our job to teach them because, as I said, they're not getting money in their hand. They don't understand the value of money necessarily because even now we can't withdraw money from the banks except the ATM. So there's not a lot of cash changing hands. So you need to teach children the value of money somehow. That's a whole different show. There are so many ways of doing that, but working and doing chores and actually getting money and working out whether it's an hourly rate, whatever it is, so they understand, taking them to the supermarket and telling them to guess how much the groceries cost. Try that. When you do a big
$7. No.
I would love you to report back on that. Go and do a big shop and take your daughter and say, how much do you think this will cost?
She's pretty good. She's got a Spriggy account, and yeah, even though it's tax, she knows how much is in there down to the cent.
Yeah. But the value, the concept of the value. So how much does it cost to feed a family?
She knows how much it is for an iced chai.
And they know, so in Victoria, I don't know if it's the same here, but in Victoria it's the Mikey cards, you know, so they know how much it costs to do a train trip, my kids, because they've got to top it up on a regular basis. And my youngest said to me the other day, my allowance is going all on the Mikey. And I said, well, why didn't you tell me sooner? Because we try and teach them to live within their means as well. So we kind of increased her allowance because she had proof that most of her allowance was going on the Mikey. So all of a sudden her understanding of the value of money appeared when she tried to use her card, and there was not enough in it.
Not enough, yeah. We've only got a few minutes left, so just probably a couple more questions, which is, I'd like to ask about building wealth then when people are on limited finances. How can they start to build wealth?
There's the micro investing apps around. Again, I'm not a huge fan of them because I do not believe they create healthy habits, because, you know, when you round up and it just goes into that account. And so I'd rather be saving, even if it's $10 on a regular basis, and then when you get to $500, pop it into a CommSec account or your bank's, you know, and pick a share or a diversified investment, and just have the win of purchasing something and know that you are building that wealth. If you don't have a lot of money, superannuation is a really good one. Even though we can't use it right now, if you're employed, salary sacrificing, even a small amount of money can make a big difference in the end. Or putting money into your own super if you're a business owner as well. Because superannuation is one of the ones that you can do small amounts.
Yeah. What about assets? If we have the money, should we be buying assets? Should we be buying property? Should we be investing in shares? Is there any hard or fast rules?
I don't have hard and fast rules, but it's an understanding of what risk and reward come with every investment vehicle. And for property, for example, I say you cannot sell a property brick by brick. So your understanding of that property needs to be quite specific in terms of, I will flip that property by then and take the capital gain, or I'm happy to get the income from it. And on property, here's something that we forget. We put so much time and effort into our own homes, which is an emotional decision, but it's not an income producing asset unless we rent a bedroom out. And really all we're doing is passing it on as an estate if we're planning to live in that house for a long time. So you don't actually see any gain from one of the biggest assets we own is our own home.
I've just got a question that's been sitting here for a while, but I will get to it because otherwise poor Stephen has been waiting for his question. He's a tradie. He says he gets all his work from quotes that he gives customers, but the quoting process can be very time consuming and it's not something that he can charge for. So are there any suggestions on how to cover this time spent funding new business?
Put up your hourly rates. So you should still be putting your quoting into your labour potentially. So because that is still services and your exertion that goes into it. Getting some templated quotes if you haven't. Some of the systems or processes behind things, even in old school people like me, I use Xero for my invoices and quotes now. Having quoting in something like Xero, you can flick it to an invoice straight away. So instead of double handling, I have clients that charge for their quotes and then they take it off when it's when it's an agreeable figure, or they go ahead. It's what works for you. But it was Stephen, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Value yourself. Value the time that you put into that quote, and try and fit it into your hourly rate in terms of the labour component.
Thank you so much, Amanda.
Thank you. That went really quickly, didn't it?
I'm afraid we've got no more time left. So thank you everyone at home for joining us for the Small Business Guide to Money Matters Masterclass. That was a mouthful. And thanks to our wonderful expert here,
Thank
Amanda
you.
Thompson, for all her fantastic insights. And if you want to find out more about Amanda and her services, well, check out www.endurancefinancial.com.au. And don't forget to check out her book, Financially Fit Women, which unfortunately we didn't get any time to talk about, but it's all about how women can manage their finances better. And yes, just because you're a man doesn't mean you can't read it. It probably applies to you too. But women have that career gap and all those other things to account for, that they want to make up their money. Anyway, if you're looking for more expert advice, head over to our website, kochiesbusinessbuilders.com.au, and get the latest news, inspirational stories and expert tips. Thanks again for joining us, and see you next time.